guitar, and I was thinking to myself that, you know what? I always loved this song. I always loved Cats in the Cradle. There's something about it. It talks to you about life. It talks about relationships, about putting your time in. It talks about how fast time moves. And I was thinking to myself, what more relatable to Erikson's stages of life than this song? So when I went through it, I actually was circling different ideas and different stages that I saw in it. So feel free to mark up your paper. It's for you to keep. And on the back, after the song, there should be a poem, which I'll come to later in the presentation. But so here it goes. And I do think that his tune brings out the experience of life. And that's one reason why I thought, it would be very apropos to sing it to you all. All right? If you never heard it, I hope I do it justice. Because a child arrived just the other day. Came to the world in the usual way, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. He learned to walk while I was away. He was talking before I knew it, and as he grew, he said, I'm gonna be like you. You're gonna be like you. And the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy, little women down the road. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when we'll get together again. Yeah, we'll have a good time then. My son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, then come on, let's play. Can you teach me to throw? I said, not today. I got a lot to do, and he said, that's okay. And as he walked away, he smiled and he said, I'm gonna be like him, yeah. You're gonna be like him. And the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy, little woman down the road. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when we'll get together then, yeah. We'll have a good time then. But he came from college just the other day. So much like a man, I just had to say, proud of you, could you sit for a while? He shook his head and he said with a smile, what I really like that is to borrow the car keys. See you later, can I have my please? The cats in the cradle and the silver spoon. Little boy, little woman, and on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when we'll get together then, yeah. We'll have a good time then. This is towards the end of Erikson's stages. I've long since retired and my son's moved away. Called him up just the other day. I'd like to see you if you don't mind. He said, I'd love to dad if I could find the time. So my new job's a hassle and the kids have flu, but it's sure nice talking to you, Dad. Sure nice talking to you. As I hung up the phone, it occurred to me, growing up just like me, yeah, my boy was just like me. And the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon, little boy blue and the man on the moon. When you're coming home, son, I don't know when, but we'll get together then. We'll have a good time then. So, thank you very much. It's a little off, but I appreciate that. So as I was going through this fantastic song, let me just start with the slides already. As mentioned in the previous fantastic presentation, Erikson has 8 stages of development. I kind of made it a circle because it starts somewhere and then it ends at some point. Okay? The first stage, is trust and mistrust, which is childbirth. That's signified in the first stanza of the song of Child Arrived. Right, just the other day. And the dad talks about, but there were planes to catch and bills to pay. The kid moves on to the next stage, maybe towards the end of the first stage, where he's learning to walk, right, and talk. And what I found interesting, actually, was stage 2. I didn't think it was represented so well in this song, okay? But we'll come to it later with some videos that I have. Oh, sorry, Professor. So then you move on to the next stanza, where he goes, we're going to leave the refrain of the cats in the cradle and the silver spoon for to sing it later together, but I'll stick to the narrative here. And he goes, my son turned 10 just the other day. He said, thanks for the ball, Dad. Come on, let's begin. The son's trying to grow. He's taking some level of initiative, right? He wants to become good at something. Teach me to throw, right? He's aspiring towards things. Even though the father comes up with an excuse, the son is happy. He's smiling every day. Something about this, whatever's going on at home, you know the dad's away. Whatever partner is there, whatever person is raising this child definitely seems to have some level of good self-esteem. Again, we'll skip the cats in the cradle. He moves on, progresses to college. Dad sees him and says, oh, he looks like a man, like clearly whatever, how his presence was clearly one that's been foundationally built up. And the father wants to spend time, at this point he's trying to bond with him. The son says, no, I gotta go. He's clearly got friends. If you don't mind, I'll take the car, and I'll see you later. Sounds like he's got some relationships or where to be socially. He's pretty healthy. Again, the refrain talks about how the dad was always flying around or busy supporting his family, doing what man's gotta do for his family, but neglecting what's real in life. And he says, I've long since retired, and my son's moved away. I called him up just the other day, right? And here you talk about the latter stages of life, of generativity and stagnation versus integrity and despair. Also in 7 and 8, here's the dad who his whole life he was jet setting all around. Now he's thinking like, where's my connection to my son? And he actually makes the effort. It's not just the son's home and he's home at the same time. Let's talk. Kid got to run out. Father's actually reaching out. What happens here? His son says, I'm just really sorry, everything's hectic at work, kids have the flu, I was sure nice talking to you. So I thought this was a beautiful representation, again, of Erikson's stages from two ends of the spectrum also. You have the child kind of building himself up. You have the adult, the dad, who's already mid-stage going through, progressing towards the end stages. And you see how, who knows how the son's life's going to play out, but you see how the father's life towards the end is questionable, to say the least. So I'd like to move on. This graphic I thought was really beautiful. It's the iceberg, right? You have the tip sticking out, but you have everything underneath. You have all these different emotional or humanistic skills that we all need. And that's all beneath the surface, all of us. Everyone just sees at the surface, no one sees what's below. Hence the stages of life are there to tell us, hey, look at life and realize there's so many things that we need to pick up as we move through and build the inside. So this is just a better graph that the first one which I had, like kind of how we transition through life via that half circle. Here we're going through stage 1, stage 2, and we're just going to live here and not go through every single one. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. Again, Erikson explains that throughout life, he, again, building off Freud, he suggests that life has many different stages. And at each stage, you have a cycle of different, either right now, I guess I'm focusing on explaining the psychosocial theory here, which is this idea that life is made of stages. And in every stage, we have crisis. But, as the slide I'll show you in a minute shows, or states emphatically, the crisis isn't one that's something extraordinary. It's something that we all deal with as we go through life. And it's something that we want. The same way when we're struggling, we're working out, right? We're lifting a weight, which on some of you drop that on yourself, that's going to be a real crisis, right? But you choose to actively be there because you're going to build yourself from that challenge. So crisis, even though he calls it a crisis, it's really more of a challenge. When you overcome a challenge, you grow. On the flip side, if you don't overcome that challenge, what happens? You drop that weight on yourself, you're going to hurt yourself. Or if somebody or the adults around you don't help you, you end up regressing. And then you'll have to deal with that later. Okay? That leads us to, again, the resolution, term used when you're dealing with it on the more technical level. Okay? Okay, we talked about this already. Okay. Now we're dealing with stage 2, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Stage 2 is built off stage 1, which was trust and mistrust. If the child successfully went through that stage and had a proper environment that they built trust, They now are okay to so-called actualize themselves on some level, hence autonomy. Autonomy is when the child begins to say, hey, I can do something myself. I want to explore. They're not afraid. They're not afraid that someone's going to hit them. They're not afraid that someone's going to scream at them. And they're really just begin to try different things. Okay, hence independence, we talked over there, and confidence. So I thought to demonstrate this idea of whether the child is going to be receiving positive reinforcement and dealing with the challenges, I'll have two clips. Here's Nemo and his dad, when Nemo's about to go out and swim in the big, big, deep ocean. Okay? Let me just click on this guy. I gotta go to 58 seconds. First thoughts when you saw that? Parent chastising their kid. What do you think? Think he was appropriate?
Not in front of his friends.
Not in front of his friends, but you still thought the way he did it was appropriate?
Not that either. But
okay.
That's like the icing on the cake. Is that he was chastising in front of his friends to shame him.
Legitimately, embarrassment. You even heard one of his friends say, "You're not brave enough." Right?
I think also the parent is projecting his fear onto the child. That's the key. I think I got from that.
Very fair. Felt the same way. I felt when I saw that, I thought it was a very interesting and excellent example of what can go wrong when you're raising a kid. Even if the father really had concerns about Nemo going there, to shame him in front of his friends, to tell him that he can't do it, there's different ways to stop someone from doing something that may hurt them without belittling them. That's what I thought. I thought he really belittled them.
And also, like when you said that clearly he had a good dad, and he was projecting it onto his evil, and even telling him to the point that he can't do it. You know what I mean? Instead of encouraging it, even if he himself is not able to do it, he could have still encouraged him.
Right, you want your child to be better than you. Like that's the best parent, right?
Exactly.
All right, fantastic. I appreciate the insights, and then we'll go to the next one. I get back to just X out. Let's get that popcorn. Let's go here. Okay. All right, next slide. What is it? Space bar. Okay. Now we'll have to go to this one. Now, if you guys haven't seen this yet, you're up for a treat. Okay. Is this person?
Google Fi. Phone plan. Like Google.
Probably went down.
You can check.
Okay, 110. 1 second. It's a long way to stop.
On the party, sit and wait. Sit on the party, it will be great. Sitting on the party, ready to go. But nothing is happening, why I don't know.
That is terrible.
Okay, so what were your initial reactions in contrast to the Finding Nemo clip? What would you say about this situation?
It's very
It's
positive.
very positive, very encouraging. He had an audience.
Right.
So, it just made him all the more, like, motivated to just do it and to try.
Right, it's like, I want to go potty.
And he got rewarded.
Right. He wasn't pressured into doing it.
Right.
He wasn't pressured in. He had to support with his parents and said, okay, if not now, just wait, it's gonna happen. Just relax, try it again later today.
Right. That was amazing.
Yes.
I'm with the point 1,000%. Yeah.
And then when he finally did it, he felt so good about it, and he was rewarded with the underwear.
Right. It's like
It's a
he
big
framed
step.
it.
He just
Yeah.
made it to the next
He
stage.
progressed, and that's what this stage is about, progressing. And I thought also, this clip, everybody, the parents got in on it, the siblings got in on it, like he's part of the club now. Yeah, he's built that up. And that's one of the
They even had a
central.
dance
And
to go
there
with
is-
it.
there
They had
is-
a song and a dance to go with it.
Right.
So, he knows how to do it to remember, probably help him remember to go.
Right, he now associates it with something
And
positive.
there's unity in the family, like teamwork.
Yeah.
Right. That's cool. Yeah, so I thought it was such a great contrast to Nemo. Like you had the not just the parent relationship, you also had the crowd. And so here you have the child in one situation being ridiculed in front of so many, and another being celebrated and being accepted. And not just that, on some level of saying, hey, what you're doing is amazing. So at this stage in life, 18 months to around 2 or 3, depending, children actualize their autonomy by doing certain tasks on their own. Toilet training is very instrumental here. Besides for parents that's happy to stop, dealing with dirty diapers. The fact that the child has control of his own body, his or her own body, makes her feel good. It's got that level of independence. I can do it, right? It's a step in building towards a greater person. Also, the children begin to say, I want this food, I don't want that food, right? Or if mommy's feeding me, I don't want daddy to feed me, or vice versa. There's certain people that they only want. Why? Because that's what I want. And that's something that on some level, however you want to deal with that, you have to respect their autonomy. The idea that they're allowed to choose, and whether it's good for them or not, you'd have to deal with that. Probably, again, in either Nemo's dad fashion or the potty song environments, right? Now, do you always want to let them do everything? No. But the question is, how do you constructively, I would say, teach them what is okay and what's not okay? That's one of the challenges that will come to later. Again, another thing that they begin to accentuate at this point is toy selection, and sometimes they're going to put on their shoes backwards and their socks backwards, but they're so proud that they did it themselves. And that's important to give them that affirmation that you did do it yourself. Now let's just switch it around. Well, let's get it out straight. Okay, 1 second here. Okay, now this is very important. This is what we talked about when we're comparing the videos. Very important ideas for those who control the environment that this young, soon to be at some point in the future adult is in. You have to make sure that the environment is safe, that this child is able to go out and be independent, able to explore without making some sort of catastrophic mistake. In a sense, knowingly and unknowingly. Unknowingly, obviously, that's a terrible thing. But if a child's afraid because they know that there's fear there, that also is destructive to them building that sense of autonomy. So making sure that wherever this child is a safe environment is number one. And it leads to everything else. It leads to a lot for the independent choices. And as you mentioned again, versus Nemo and the video with the potty training song, the difference between being supportive and positive versus being critical. It's instrumental in helping this child develop properly. Okay, basic strengths and virtues which the child accumulates or develops at this point is the security themselves. Okay, the trust level was built in stage 1. the notion of being secure in who they are and secure in their environment is something they continue to develop in stage 2. So it moves from trust to security and a level of confidence. Again, even if they're making mistakes, they have the confidence to try. Okay, that's the positive development. And what's so important is that, as I mentioned and was demonstrated fantastically in the previous presentation, is that this has ramifications for the rest of your life. If somebody doesn't feel autonomous, doesn't have that ability to trust themselves, even to try, and even to make a mistake and be okay, they're going to hold back. They're not going to do typical tasks or be involved in environments where they may fail. And it's going to hold them back in so many ways. It will hold them back socially and academically. On the flip side, if they do develop this autonomy, the odds of them succeeding in those environments, socially, academically, and in any aspect, this is of paramount importance. Okay. So what are some major challenges that this individual may face at this stage? What environmental risks do we need to know concept of the stage? And how about family risks? We did talk about this just a moment ago, the idea of, again, being overly critical. That's very problematic. Children are very, very impressionable. Okay? The developing child, all the way up, but we know the brain continues to develop until around 25, they suggest. Okay? And with the way you impact the child in the early years is something that it's very hard for them to let go of. However, there are interventions, there are ways to deal with it, but you'd rather set the mold proper first than have to go back and reshape it. It's much harder to undo that. Again, overbearing parents, lack of safe environment, these would hold back the child from doing what they want to do. So to accentuate the idea of tonic resolution, this tonic resolution, I wanted to read a poem. It's on the back of your of the page of the Cats in the Cradle, and it relates to. Does anybody want to read it here? Actually, anybody want to give it a shot? I'm happy to do it for you. I have always had pride in my independence. Always made my own decisions. Made my own friends, done my own work. As all others, I learned this at a young age, this self-reliance of sorts. It is freeing to have freedom and relieving to be relieved of responsibilities that are not mine. But it is nice to think of myself as small and dependent on mommy and daddy because it was a simpler time. Anybody want to share their thoughts, what they thought, if you heard what I read? Any feeling who do you think's writing this right now, this poem? What age would you give to the author? I don't know the age. I'm just telling you, I'm asking you what you feel. I have my own feelings, but I'm curious what the class would think. The volunteers?
Well, it sounds like an adult because it says I've always had pride in my independence.
Right.
I don't know any children as independent.
Right.
So it's definitely an adult boy. Always made my own decisions. He's reflecting on his previous years. His upbringing, whether it was peer pressure, whether it was other obstacles that he faced. He always pretty much, he or she always pretty much made their own decisions. And carefully chose who was around him at that point. As he stated, made my own friends, did my own work. As all others, I learned this at a young age. Self-reliance of sorts.
That's what stood out to me too. The first one, which says, I have always had pride in my independence. Always meaning, starting from you. And also when she stated that he, I learned this at a young age. His self-reliance of sorts. So, and then you were just bringing it back to mom and dad.
Right.
So it shows that there is a reflection here. But thanks to them, he or she are able to be who they are today.
Right. Thank you guys. So I agree with you. The way I read it was that this is definitely somebody who's mature in life. But I would suggest that this person mentions that they've always felt this ability to be autonomous since a young age. They're very thankful for it. It allows them to make their own choices and not get stuck up in some other person's guilt trip where they don't belong, right? They're not going to be pulled into something else where they know they shouldn't be there. Why? Because they had the ability, because they were raised in an environment where they clearly had a lot of love and nurture that enabled them to build this autonomy that carried them through life. And what I loved about this poem was that it talks about dealing with life. Sometimes you have to learn to leave things around, leave things to the side and not get involved, which is really being an autonomous individual, is making that decision for yourself, what's right for you. Right? Sometimes people feel that they have to do something because somebody asked them to do it. Right? And otherwise they're a bad person. They don't have that self-respect that comes from knowing that it's okay to act alone, and to make a decision for yourself. So when it comes to dystonic and syntonic resolution, that relates to how a person sees themselves. Syntonic would be, am I doing what I really believe I should be doing? Versus dystonic, I know I should be doing something else, but for some reason my actions are not in equilibrium with what I see myself, my self-image. And so a child raised, and again, there's so many factors along the way, but one way to help them build this way of life, a systonic element or resolution, is this form of encouragement as they grow and find their own autonomy. Okay, what I thought was very interesting today, I found this on Humans in New York, we talk about interventions, okay? Now, it's not necessarily to stage 2, but it talks about, 5 minutes? Okay, but it talks about an individual who's chronicle. You guys ever hear following Humans in New York? I love it.
Oh,
Yeah,
the
it's
last
amazing,
one?
right?
That's great.
Okay, so today this just popped up on my feed. I have to put it in. Okay, I'll read it to you guys if you haven't seen it. It's very, very powerful. It talks about this young man describes his experience growing up, and things weren't always easy, and he learned to didn't have proper coping mechanisms. But somebody along the way gave him time to get in touch with himself and look at things differently. So here I will read out loud to you guys. He says, "It was a woman. I don't even remember her name, but sometimes she'd take me out of my 3rd grade class, and we'd go to her office and just play with Play-Doh or dried beans. I don't even remember what we talked about, but she helped me find ways to control my anger. Stop cussing in class, stop doing off-the-wall things, stuff like that. I think it was the first time someone ever really tried to help me. When I was a baby, my father got murdered. And sometimes you can't really talk to your family about nothing, because there are these sensitive spots in dark places, and maybe they're hurting too. So people just hold on to stuff, especially in this neighborhood, especially males. They walk around with pain on them because it charges them up. They need it so they can have an excuse to lash out and do whatever they want. I guess some people win on it, but at the end of the day, I'd rather win on being positive. I don't mind saying how I feel, and I'm not a therapist, but I try to let people around me know what that I don't mind if they share it. That if they're hurting about something, they can call me." So here you have a young man who clearly grew up in a very tough environment, but somebody doesn't even remember her name. By coming in and allowing this child in 3rd grade, again, it's a little bit out of this age range, but the idea stands true about coming in and correcting it. As a matter of fact, it could relate back to the stage, because if the person didn't have the proper, again, loving, safe environment to develop autonomy, right? Or it could be initiative in the next stage, or it could be the trust at the earlier stage, right? But someone along the way connected with him, allowed this person to speak their mind and to maybe talk things out. They begin to realize that it wasn't always the way they thought it was, and allowed them to build a healthier self-concept. And that would be, again, a form of intervention. Again, what I think is so beautiful and powerful for all of us here is that you see how this guy doesn't even remember the person who helped him.
He doesn't remember what helped him cope with his daggers.
And he is better off for it. And not just that, towards the end of it, he says, I talk to people. I say, hey, you can talk to me. Right? A lot of guys don't have that. But he says, who does he attribute to? Some woman in 3rd grade who helped him out, talking about what? Who knows what. But he clearly felt safe with her. He felt good with her. He found somebody that he could rely on. I thought this was today. I was like, I gotta put that in. It's beautiful. So how it's related to the previous stage, we talked about it. Again, in order to have proper autonomy, you need trust, okay? If you don't have trust, you can't really explore. And the big part of being autonomous is going and opening up that drawer and pulling out the clothes and trying things on and believing that your parents, whoever your guardian is going to be happy with you. Those two together lead to initiative, right? Because once you feel like, yo, I could be my own person, you can go take it a step further, try new things out, right? So another theory I thought might be pertinent to this was Carl Rogers, the humanistic person-centered therapy. Very cool. He talks about the idea that he believes that human beings have their self-concept, and we have to help them try to find that equilibrium where they meet themselves, how they see themselves. And that's important to give them, again, a positive encouragement, not be overly critical, and allow them to actualize themselves the way they see themselves. Chrono system, again, to put this in, obviously depending on what's going on at the time in history, where they are they Depression era kid, right? Are they in the recession? Are they boom years? All that can play into their environment and how they're going to be affected. Also, what's going on in their family life, who they living with, how they affected by what's going on. All that plays into the development and the security, and I would say how they will shape that environment that this child lives in. Okay? And absolutely the income stuff.
I agree with that.
You agree with that?
I do.
See, fully.
Okay, so let's get a little round of applause for that. I say that one for the presentation, but another one for the choice in song and the guitar playing. I really appreciate that. Please, any feedback, comments,
Very unique.
donations?
Got my guitar back, so.
I think it was a great presentation. I love the song. I'm going to download it. I've never heard it before.
Oh, it's awesome.
It says a lot.
Yeah.
It was very informative. The presentation was great. Thank you. I know a little bit more about Erikson's stage, second stage now. You made it very clear. The movie script was right on point. And I just want to thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
The song was just very refreshing. It was something different and just gave us more, something just kind of getting them more relaxed and ready to hear you out. The choices in the video with the baby, it was cool.
Thank you.
Helped us, listen up and get a good laugh out of it, but also learn along the way.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I love the way you started with the song. At least you get our attention and you get our mind prepared for the presentation.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Definitely love the thoughts. I liked it.
All right.
Very original.
I do want to say I was a little scared. I'm like, do I do the guitar right now? I'm like, you know what? You gotta do things that scare you sometimes.
I mean, one thing, I echo everyone's statement. One thing about presentations is it's performance as well. It's performance art. You craft your presentation much like a singer crafts a number, decides to sing a previous hit, this, that, and the other. And for this presentation, you put a lot into it, and you wanted us to feel a certain portion or mood throughout your presentation. One of the things I always say is the icebreaker, the first couple of minutes, the first 30 seconds. If you lose your audience in the first 30 seconds, you may not ever get them back. A lot of times you might have school kids or someone who's just presentationed out. They've been at meetings all day, and they look up and they hear you, and if you don't capture them that first couple of minutes, they're going right back to their Facebook feed or whatever the case may be.
Right.
Nobody in this room did that as a result of your icebreaker. But that wasn't even the best part. The best part was the information were very clear, poised. Presentation was expertly done. I can easily see you at a conference or somewhere giving up this information because you knew the information. It wasn't like you were introduced to it today. And that's what I often see sometimes. It's like, oh, somebody's like just becoming acquainted with the material. You obviously know the material. So well done, great job.
Thank you. Really appreciate it. You guys are an awesome audience.
Yes.
Wow.
When I do have children, I will play potty song.
Dude, that was, dude, right?
So, we
don't
got
know.
one more presentation left, and I don't know
I'm-
if Ali, you got big shoes to fill, but.
Allie, you want me to leave it out?
No.
No,
Okay.
please turn that off.
Let's see, I wonder if it works. I hope so. Let's see.
You